Number 1. Salim wants to purchase tickets from a vendor to watch a tennis match. The vendor charges a one-time service fee for processing the purchase of the tickets. The equation T is equal to 15N plus 12 represents the total amount T in dollars Salim will pay for N tickets. What does the 12 represent in this equation? So, what you can do at first is just compare the 12 that you have here to y is equal to mx plus b form of an equation, and really it aligns with the b form, which is, as you guys know just from algebra, it's the y-intercept of your equation. And your y-intercept, just going back to the graph, it's when x is equal to 0, and it's kind of like your starting point when nothing has passed already, when no x has moved already, and it's kind of what you're starting with. So let's see, what does the 12 represent in this equation? So we know what the 12 is. So now we just have to figure out what it would be in this equation. Well, it's easy to think about it, but if 0 or n is equal to 0, so if, let's see what it says, if n tickets have been sold, then it seems like the total amount will be 12, or how much they've raised just from that service fee. So it's basically telling you B, the amount of the service fee in dollars, because 12 is what you're starting with, and N is kind of like what you're increasing as you get more ticket sales. So you don't need to have any ticket sales for someone to just pay the fee, because the fee comes with anything that you do. It's just really the tickets that will increase the cost. So that's just kind of how you would have to see this one. It's not too bad. So let's move on to number 2. It says a gardener buys 2 kinds of fertilizer. Fertilizer A contains 60% filler materials by weight, and fertilizer B contains 40% filler materials by weight. Together, the fertilizers bought by the gardener contain a total of 240 pounds of filler materials. Which equation models this relationship, where X is the number of pounds of fertilizer A and Y is the number of pounds of fertilizer B? So basically what it's telling you is that when you add the 60% of the materials and the 40% of the materials, you're going to get 240. Now we just need to figure out what's going to be on the other side. So I know that fertilizer A is going to be X and the other one is going to be Y, fertilizer B. So now we just have to put the right numbers. So it says 60% goes with fertilizer A, and it's telling you that 60% of the weight of fertilizer A is going to be the filler materials. And it's also telling us that there are 240 pounds of filler materials. So don't get confused and put 60. It's telling you that the weight of fertilizer A, which is X, can be represented by 60% in order to get the filler materials. So you'd have to do 0.6 times, or I'm not going to write X because it looks the same, 0.6 times X in order to figure out what the filler materials are, because it's 60% of the weight that's here, and that's how you would do it. So it would be a 0.6 in front of here, and then it says 40% for fertilizer B, so it would be 0.4 there. And the only one that aligns with that is B. You could automatically eliminate A and C just because they have the wrong number in front of the wrong letter. And then D is just kind of knowing that it's not 60 times X, it's really 60% of X. So that's kind of how you do that problem. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear this. Remember that if anyone has any questions, concerns, anything that they wanna ask right here, you can unmute yourself, you can put it in the chat box. I'm here to help. So let's see number 3. What is the sum of the complex numbers 2 plus 3i and 4 plus 8i, where I is equal to the square root of -1? So for this problem, I know it kind of seems weird, but I think I've seen a problem like this before on a previous SAT. You guys may have seen it as well. But really, you're just adding the terms 2 plus 3i and 4 plus 8i. The whole I is equal to the square root of -1 is there to confuse you. There's really nothing you can do with that unless you have an I squared. Then you can simplify it. But there are no I squareds here, so I'm not even gonna bother telling you how that would work. But in this case, all you'd have to do is just add those together. So you get 6 plus 11i. That's C. It's that simple. So it's really, again, this is another example of the SAT trying to trick you guys. They put that square root of -1 there just to see, kind of throw you off, when really it's just an adding problem. So let's see. number 4. It says, in the equation above, P and T are constants. Which of the following could be the value of P? So what we need to know is that it's really important. You need to know that when you multiply these out, or let me circle that better. Sorry. When you multiply those out, you would get 4x squared minus 9. And you need to know that the first thing you do when you multiply, it's FOIL, I think. I couldn't remember the acronym, but I think that's what it's called. You do px times px first. So that means that px times px has to be 4x squared, because that's the first term you get. It's the only term you get when you multiply those two letters. You get an x squared. So that means the number in front of here has to be a p squared. So what number squared will give you 4? We're kind of like matching it up to what's there. Well, the only one that would give it that to us, we can just do the square root of 4 in order to get it. It has to be 2. Well, it could be -2, but all the answers here are positive, so 2 is really the only possible answer for that. So it's not about kind of like distributing this whole thing, doing the whole FOIL, px times px and then px minus t. It's not about doing that. It's about noticing that the first term will have to be really just px times px. And when you do that, you're really doing p times p. So you have to find a number, p times p, that will give you 4. And that's really how you would get that answer. Remember, a lot of these problems, they can be done a longer way, but it's about doing it the quickest way to do it in the time constraint. So let's see the next page. This is a graph problem, and I haven't really done that many, so I'll just do this one too. So it says, which of the following is the graph of the equation y is equal to 2x minus 5 in the xy plane? The first thing I like to do is find the graph with the correct y-intercept, because the y-intercept is, at least for me, the easiest thing to find. Remember, it's always going to be on the y-axis, and it's always this number right over here, the -5. If you have a quadratic, it would be a little bit different. But here, it would be the -5, at least when you're doing with y is equal to mx plus b form. So we know that has to be -5. The y-intercept here is at 5. This one's at like 2.5, kind of. This is at -5. This is at -5. This one can't be it, and this one can't be it, because it has to be -5, and those are already wrong, just because they have the wrong y-intercept. So now it's just about knowing, it's not really about plotting points on the graph, it's just about knowing how slope works. And you know that if you have a positive slope, your graph goes up. If you have a negative slope, your graph goes down. So since 2 is positive, this is the only one that works because it's going up. This one is going down, so it can't be this one either. So again, this is something that can be done easily in 20 seconds. Remember, like I said, it's always good to get those first ones out of the way and spend more time on the harder ones. And that's pretty much it. So let me move on to the next page. All right, let's see. It says, if x is equal to 2/3y and y is equal to 18, what is the value of 2x minus 3? So really, we're just kind of plugging in the value for x. So let me find what x is first, and we'll plug it into 2x minus 3. X is equal to 2/3y. It says that y is equal to 18. So all you have to do is multiply that. I noticed that these two can cancel, 3 and 18. So this is a 6. That's a 1. So x is equal to 12. So then now all you have to do is plug it in to the 2x minus 3. 2 times 12 minus 3. You have 24 minus 3, and that's 21. So the answer is A, 21. Again, a lot of these problems you'll notice are, they're really kind of just simple algebra, simple plugging things in. But then when you get to like the next page is like the number 15s, the number 14s, they become increasingly harder. So just keep that in mind. And then, yeah, so let's just do number 7 too. And remember, if I'm going too fast, just let me know. I just want to make sure that I can do as many problems as possible. So let's look at number 7. It says, a bricklayer uses the formula n is equal to 7 times the length times the height to estimate the number of bricks n needed to build a wall that is L feet long and H feet high. Which of the following correctly expresses L in terms of N and H? So really what you're doing, and I'll rewrite the equation right over here, you just want L by itself. So you're going to be doing a series of operations to get L by itself on the equal side and everything else on the other side, just because you want L to be equal to whatever terms are here, as you guys can see through all the answers. You see, for this one, that the only way to get rid of things that you're multiplying by are by dividing. So in order to get rid of the 7 and the H, you have to divide by 7 and H to cancel those out. And what you do to one side, you always have to do to the other. So once you cancel these out, you cross that out, you get that L is equal to N over 7H. And that one is choice C, and it's that simple. Again, a lot of these problems I think you guys do know how to do. Just doing them just to make sure. Let's look at number 8. I think this is the first one that's a little bit less easy to solve in such a short amount of time. So let's see. The table above shows some values for the functions w and t, for which value of x is w of x plus t of x equal to x. So for this one, really what you do, I would say this is more of a guess and check type of problem. You're just going to go through each choice, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're going to add these two together, wx and t of x, and see if it gives you x1. That's really the way to do it. Because for this, when interpreting this table, everything here, this would be w of 1 plus t of 1, and you have to see if it's equal to 1. So that's kind of what you're doing. All right, so let's see. I'm going to go through each row and see if it gives it to me. And the first one I get, that'll be our answer. So these two, -1 and -3, when you add them together, you get -4. That's not 1, so it can't be this one. Let's see, 3 and -1. When you add those together, 3 plus -1 is 2. When you add those together, you get 2, and the x value is 2, so that's the answer. It's just about knowing what to add, but it does say w of x plus t of x, and you're just going by row. So just make sure that you're interpreting the graph correctly, because no, not the graph, the table correctly, and you're just making sure that you're doing it correctly, because this one is easy, but you just need to know what you're doing. So let's see number 9. It says, if the square root of x plus the square root of 9 is equal to 64, what is the value of x? So this one can easily be solved just by simplifying the equation that's given. All right. So the first thing you need to do is just kind of know your square roots. So you need to know that the square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of 64 is 8, and you have an x here. And then all you have to do is move over the 3 to the other side. You end up getting 5 on this side. And I'm going to erase this over here just because I'm running out of space. But when you have the square root of x is equal to 5, in order to eliminate or get x by itself, you need to get rid of that radical. So how would you do that? You square both sides. So really, x is equal to 25, and the answer is C. So again, a lot of these problems are very doable, but you guys will notice that as we progress, they get harder. And that's just a common fact about the SAT. So let's see the next page. All right. Jamie is preparing for a bicycle race. His goal is to bicycle an average of at least 280 miles per week for 4 weeks. He bicycled 240 miles for the first week, 310 for the second, and 320 for the third, which inequality can be used to represent the number of miles x Jamie could bicycle on the 4th week to meet his goal. So the one thing you'll notice about number 10 is that none of the answers are in like a traditional format. So what I'm going to do is write the traditional format and show you guys how we can move it around to get the answer to this problem. So it's saying that he wants to bicycle an average of at least 280. So that means that it's going to be greater than or equal to 280, because the average has to be bigger than or equal to 280. So how do we find the average? Well, average is just adding up the total miles for each week and dividing it by the amount of weeks that were there. We know that it's 4 weeks, so everything would be divided by 4. I'm gonna write that a little bit longer, and all you have to do is add up every single week. So it would be 240 the first. It would be, it looks like 310 the second, 320 the third, and it's saying X is the one that's missing. On the fourth week, it says it right there. So X, even though we don't know it, we still have to add them up all together and divide by 4 in order to get the average. So that's kind of how you do it. As you guys can see, none of the ones in this problem kind of represent that, but there's one thing you can do to get choice D, which is the answer. All you have to do is multiply by 4 on both sides, because everything is over 4. And you guys know that in order to cancel out something in the denominator, you just multiply by the same number in the numerator, which is just multiplying by 4. These two cancel out. You end up getting 240 plus 310 plus 320 plus X. I know, pretty long, but really it's now just 4 times 280. It's the same thing. It's just written in a different form. And this is kind of a weird 2, but that is a 2. So really now you have to just see which one matches up, and it's D. No, choice A doesn't use the average correctly. They do the average of these 3, but they forget this one, and that's not really how to do the average. You can't just add it. You have to do it by the amount of values that are there, which is 4, even though we don't know what X is. B just kind of interprets the problem incorrectly, because it's just all the numbers and all the letters in the wrong places. And again, this one would be right if they had done X over 4 too, but they kind of forgot that the X has to be included in the average too, so it's wrong. So D is the only one that's viable in this case. Let's look at number 11. So it says the vertex of the parabola in the xy plane above is 0, c. Which of the following is true about the parabola with the equation y is equal to -a x minus b squared plus c? The first thing I'll say about this problem is notice how it gives you this, but then it's asking you about a different equation with the equation this one. So the choices, at least when I'm reading it, it says the vertex, I'm looking at choice A, the vertex b comma c, and the graph opens upward. I might be inclined to put that first, just because this graph opens upward. But notice how we're talking about this graph over here. So just, that's another intentional trick on the SAT's part. They put a graph there. They know that we're inclined to look at visual images, but really focus on the graph, the equation in this problem. Ignore the graph, because they're two different things. This is positive, this one's negative. It's gonna be completely different. So let's see. It says, which of the following is true about the parabola with the equation that, and the equation there is put in vertex form. If you go back to vertex form, you know that I'm not sure what letters go exactly in it, but you know that when it's written like this, y is equal to a, I'm just gonna write the letters that they have there, b squared plus c. The vertex is b comma c, and that's how you do it. So ignore this, the minus sign there. It would just be b comma c. That would be your vertex. So the only answers that have b comma c as a vertex are a and b. So we know it can't be c or d. So that one, that helped us out. That helped us eliminate 2 answers. But now it's just about knowing how the a affects the problem. And when the a is negative, everything changes. When the a is positive, it'll open upward like you see over here. But when it's negative, it's going to open downward. It's going to be like an upside down U. So the answer would be B. This one is not too bad, of course, but just the only thing I remember is just pay very close attention to the problem. And then that'll help you get your answer. So now I'm going to move on to number 12. Number 12 is the first problem, I would say, that kind of covers something from Algebra 2. It's one of the few that I've seen do that, but and there's probably an easier way to do it, but at least when I did the problem, I did all I did was divide the polynomials together, and that's how I got the answer. So it says, which of the following is equivalent to 4x squared plus 6 over 4x plus 2? So what I did was I divided, and there's not a lot of space here. So I just like it does require a lot of space. So I'll just do it over here on the bottom. So it says, I'll do it over here just so there's no space. 4x squared plus 6 divided by 4x plus 2. That's what you're doing. It's a fraction. So you guys know that the fraction is like another way of saying divided by. If you had 1 over 2, it would just be 1 divided by 2. So that's just the same thing that we're going to be doing. It's the same philosophy. So let's see. I'll just be going over the steps of how to do it, but and if you need more review on it, I would say like at least with this concept, like I would say like YouTube videos are a really good help on just practicing on this type of division with polynomials. But I'll kind of show you guys the steps just in case you want a refresher. So the first thing you do is you look at the term over here and see how many times it goes into 4x squared. It would go into 4x squared x times, because in order to get those two, you do 4x times x, you got 4x squared. So now the next thing you do is you have to subtract, like you would in another division problem. So what we do now is we multiply x times each term here and subtract it from the terms over there. So I multiply 4x times 4x, I get 4x squared. And then I multiply x times 2, I get 2x. I get 2x. So and I just realized I miswrote the problem. Yeah, I caught my mistake. So now you're going to be subtracting, so you can just write in 2 minuses. This ends up being 0. This ends up being 4x. So you don't really have to worry about that. I'll just erase it. So now we do the same thing again. How many times does 4x? You're always looking at the first term over here. How many times does it go into 4x over here? Well, that is just 1. And I think that one's pretty easy. And then we do the same thing as we did. So we see how many times we multiply it by each term. So we have 4x, because it's 1 times 4x, and then we have 2. And we subtract. So when you're done, you're left with a negative 2. But now you can't really do anything because 4x doesn't go into negative 2. So that's like your remainder. So going back to just knowing how to deal with the remainder, our answer is x plus 1, but we have that remainder there. So all you have to do is just divide it by the term over here. And that's kind of what your remainder is saying, that you can't really divide anymore. So it's like your leftover part. So this can just be rewritten as this. You can move the negative in front, and you have a 4x plus 2 there. And then if we go to the problem itself, only one of our choices has that as a answer. So the choice is D. I know that this concept is, if you're not in Algebra 2 yet, you're probably unfamiliar with it. And if you're past Algebra 2, you probably forgot how to do it. But just know that this is a good reminder that it will be on the test, the SAT, it could be. And if you do need more practice, I can always help you with it. And again, I would say YouTube is a really good way to practice it, just because it takes a few problems to get the hang of it. All right, so let's look at number 13. It says, in the equation above, t is a constant. If the equation has no real solutions, which of the following could be the value of t? So this is another kind of hard one, I would say. It is one of the more trickier ones. But the one thing I will say about this is that there's always a way to do it. So let's see. If you're thinking about the solutions, when I think of no real solutions, this is how I'll try to explain it. If I think of no real solutions, you need to know that there are no like x values that will factor out into this. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to move the t to the other side. And you're left with that. So from this knowledge, we just know that there's no way that when you factor this out, remember how factoring works. You can have like x minus 2, you can have x plus 1. Those are easy factors, those are easy solutions. The solutions are very obvious, right? But if we try to factor this, we're not going to get something like that. It's not going to work out. That's basically what it's telling you when there's no real solutions. There's no real number that actually works for this quadratic. So really, you just need to know that when you're doing the quadratic and you're trying to find solutions, you always can rely on the quadratic formula, which is negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So what I want to do and this is another good math tip. When you do this, let's say that we had that one that we did before, x minus 1, x plus 2. When you do the quadratic formula, you're going to get the same answers. X is equal to 1 and x is equal to negative 2. This is just a longer, more mathematical way of doing it. But if we try it out for this one, we know that whatever answer we get will be imaginary. It won't be real. There's no real solutions. And the key to finding the imaginary part, I'm going to circle this in a different color, is looking at this term over here, the b squared minus 4ac. A number becomes not real or imaginary when you have a negative in the square root. So there's only one way your solutions can become imaginary or not real, and that's if something inside here becomes negative, because you can't have a negative square root. It doesn't work. There's no solutions. So let's see. There may be an easier way to do it, but I'm just telling you guys how I saw it in the problem. I know there are many Algebra 2 ways of finding solutions like that, but I kind of forgot those, if I'm being honest. I kind of just like to apply my Algebra 1 knowledge to these questions just to see if I can get them. All right, so that's enough for the background. What I'm going to do now, and I rewrote the equation like this right over here, because you can't really factor things out. You can't know what the A, the B, and the C are until you kind of have it in this form. So now that we've done that, we know that A, B, and C. So our A is 2, our B is negative 4, our C is negative t. So let's think about it. All right. So now I'm just going to do, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plug in the numbers I know into the quadratic formula. So I'm going to write that in green. So it's a negative b, so I'm going to plug in negative 4 plus minus the square root of b squared, so negative 4 squared minus 4, and then the a is 2. Let me erase this. The a is going to be 2. The c, or our t, is going to be negative t. Oh. All right, give me 1 second. Let me let someone in. All right, so that our t will be negative, our c will be negative t. Remember that. And then everything will be over 2a, which is just going to be 2 times 2. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this just because we're kind of done with that now. All right. So when dealing with this problem, sorry about that, my keyboard kind of went crazy. Remember that I said you need to find a way for the number inside over here to be negative. That's the only way you're going to get a non-real solution. So when you end up simplifying everything, I'll do this in another color. You end up getting 4 plus or minus 16. This ends up being plus 8t over 4. So at this point, now that everything is just more simplified, we just need to find out a number that will give us 16 plus 8t as negative. So now is when we go to the answer choices and find which one works. So if you look at every single one, you can kind of just guess and check. What I'll do is I'll do it at the top. Let me erase. All right, so let's see. 16, I'm going to go through each choice and see which value of t will give us the negative, which means that it'll give us the non-real solution. So let's think about it. When you plug in 16 plus 8t with a negative 3, this becomes 16 negative 24. It becomes negative 8, which means that if t were to be negative 3, this would be negative 8 inside, which means that it would be the negative, it would be non-real. That's the answer. So I know that that one was like a mouthful. It was a lot of steps, a lot of different ways. Remember that you don't need to get every single problem right, but it's always good to just attempt and guess and see if there's an easier way to do it. But this is just if you remember how to do it and you want to do it this way on the day of the test. Don't forget about the quadratic formula. It will always help you when you have a quadratic. And that's really my tip for this problem. If you plug in the other answers here, of course, you're going to get a positive number. and that's why those would work. Those would be real solutions. -3 is the only one that would give you a non-real solution. So hopefully that kind of made sense for everyone. I know that that one was one of the more harder ones, and that's why I say that we need to go through those other ones very quickly, because this one would take 2 or 3 minutes, even if you're speed doing the math and you're on your paper. So it's already 2:35. So what I want to do is move on to the written responses, just because we only have 2 more minutes. And let's think about number 16. So let's see. Number 16. It says if a to the b over 4 is equal to 16 for positive integers a and b, what is one possible value for b of b? So I'm sure that there's like a mathematical way of doing this, but this is one of those where I was like, I think I can just do this in my head, because I know that 4 squared is equal to 16. And when I see exponents, I know that I can relate them to what I know. So how do I get a b over 4 to equal to 4 squared? And the really good thing about this problem is that there are like multiple answers. I would say there are like 4 or 5 answers at work. The only thing I thought of very quickly was 4 squared. So that's why I put that one and why I'm doing it this way. So in order for it to be 4 squared, let me erase what's here. In order for it to be 4 squared, the a has to be a 4, right? It has to be 4 squared. So now we just have to figure out a number, b over 4, that will give us 2, because that's the way to get 4 squared, which will give us 16, which is what we're looking for. So the only thing that works, you guys just need to know that 8 over 4 is equal to 2, so b can be equal to 8, and that's the easiest way I saw. Because when you do 8 over 4 here, this becomes 4 squared, everything is 16, so it checks out. Another way you can do this, I think 4 squared was the easiest way to do it, but another way, if you saw it this way, you can also know that 2 to the 4th is equal to 16. So by using this logic, 2 to the 4th has to be equal to b over 4. So that to be a 2. Now you have to find a number that will give you 4 if you divide it by 4, which is 16. So 16 is another answer to this problem. And there are many ways to do this, but I'm just giving you a few that were the easiest, just because I think 4 squared is a really easy exponent to remember, and it's the one that popped out to me. I'll do number 17 just because it's really quick. Let's see, it says 2 over 3t is equal to 5 over 2. Remember, moving on to this section, as you start from number 16 again, the first long response problems, they're supposed to be easier, and then as you progress, they get harder. So these might be on the same level as the first few from this section, like number 1 through 5. So for this one, you're just solving for t, and you just need to know that when you're solving for t, you multiply by the reciprocal, which is 3 over 2. And then t, you end up getting, that's really, really ugly, but you end up getting 15 over 4. And that's your answer. So it's really just testing your simple knowledge of algebra, just like those first few problems. And of course, they'll get harder as you go on, as you can see with number 18, which is testing geometry, which isn't as comfortable for everyone. So let's see number 18. It says, in the figure above, BD is parallel to AE. What is the length of CE? So when you're given a triangle and it looks like there are 2 triangles there, or many triangles that you can point out, the one thing that I would tell you to recommend to do is try to find out how they're similar, because that's really how you're going to find a missing part, which is CE in this case. Triangle similarity is what tells us what these missing parts are, and they do have to be similar in order for it to work. Since it says BD and AE are parallel, and this is an intersecting line, I'm gonna do it in a different color. This goes back to the angle topic in geometry. Since BD and AE are parallel, and this is like an intersecting line, you know that this and this are equal, because they kind of line up. So since those two are equal, and we know this is a 90 degree and this is a 90 degree, we can use AA, I wrote triangle instead, AA similarity to proportion them out and find the missing part. So we know that they're similar. We've already proven that. That's just kind of how it works. You don't need to do that on the test. That's just in case another similar problem requires that concept. But I'm just telling you how we can do the proportions. So let's see. It says in the figure above, BD is parallel to AE. What is the length of CE? So now that we know that they're similar, you need to remember that when you're using triangle similarity, you need to know the length of the smaller triangle or the bigger triangle in order to proportion them out. So I noticed that from these two triangles, the tiny one over here and the big one over here, it doesn't look like we have, remember that we're looking for CE. So this one over here, CE. In order for us to find the proportion that would line up, we would need to know CD, but we don't have that. So what we're gonna have to do is kind of find that length with Pythagorean Theorem. And that's not going to be too hard because it's going to be CD, so it's going to be X. We're solving for that little part. So all you'd have to do is do 6 squared plus 8 squared is equal to X squared. X is our missing part. X is the hypotenuse, and that's how Pythagorean Theorem works. It's A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared, with C being the hypotenuse. So with that in mind, all we'd have to do is just square them and then solve, of course. So this would be 36, this would be 64, this is going to be X squared, this and then going to be 100 X squared. You take the square root, our missing one is 10. So in this little triangle, and what I'm going to do is erase here, the one that we're missing, I'll highlight it in black, is 10. So that's the missing length that we don't have. So now, as I was saying earlier, in order to find the missing length, we have to line up the sides that we know with the ones that we don't know. So now that we know this one lines up, of course, with the hypotenuse of the bigger triangle. So now we can do a proportion and figure out what it is. So I'm gonna clear this work over here because this is a different part of the problem now. When you're using triangle similarity, as I've been saying many times, you need to use proportions. So, and how to use a proportion? Well, you compare two sides you do know, 6 and 18 match up, with two sides that you don't know, which would be 10, and we don't know, the one that we're missing is this one. So what you can do now is just cross multiply and solve for X, or you can just kind of notice there's easier ways to do it, of course. What I kind of noticed right away is that this can be simplified to 1 over 3, 10 over X. The only number here that will give you the same fraction is 10 over 30. So our missing part, CE, is equal to 30. But of course, you can do this another way. You can cross multiply if you don't think of it that way. You can do 10 times 180, which is 180, 6 times X, divided by 6 on both sides. I know that 6 divided by 18 is 3, and you have the 30. So this becomes 3, 1, it ends up being 30. And then that's how you get the answer. So, again, there's many ways to do a problem like this. But it's really just about finding the quickest way to do it, or the easiest way you think you can do it. Because remember, this is a test that you're taking. If you don't understand a certain approach, you shouldn't be forced to do it. You have to do it the way that you're most comfortable with. It's already 12:44. Yeah, I don't have enough time to do another one, but I'm sorry about that. But we did do quite a few today. So again, you can always try these on your own, and if you have any questions, let me know. And of course, YouTube is always a great option just in case you want a different perspective. But I'm gonna go ahead and take it to Natalie. So yeah.